We dive into the newscast with our top focus on the UK. A mutant variant of the coronavirus continues to wreak havoc across the United Kingdom, leading to a surge in new coronavirus cases. Now, in the last 24 hours, Britain recorded over 36,000 new infections, a record daily spike, while 691 people died the same day. Over 2 million people in the United Kingdom have contracted the virus over the past year, and more than 68,000 people have lost their lives to the deadly virus. Britain recently reported the presence of a new highly mutated and highly transmissible coronavirus variant. This strain reportedly is 70% more transmissible than the other strains. Cases are rising most quickly in London, the southeast and east of England. In the wake of spiking coronavirus cases, the UK has enforced stricter restrictions. In England, large areas of the southeast are now under new higher Tier 4 measures. For Tier 4 regions, no restrictions will be eased for Christmas. Reports say that the Boris Johnson government is considering locking more of England to slow down the rising cases. The new variant and its transmission capability has raised alerts across the world. Nearly 40 countries have banned travel from the UK. And for more information and details, let's quickly go across to Ollie Barrett, who's joining us live from London. Ollie, thank you for joining our broadcast today. Now, with a record rise in the number of coronavirus cases in the last 24 hours, does the UK now face the prospect of entering Tier 4 restrictions for a majority of the areas, considering Christmas and New Year have almost arrived?
It's a very real possibility, and we may hear an update from the UK government as early as today about all of this. Some reports in the British media that further parts of England will enter Tier 4 restrictions on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas. So we await updates from the government on that. There are also calls in some quarters for all of England to re-enter a national lockdown. But one of the things that's really worrying the government and the government's scientists that advise it is how quickly this new variant has been spreading not only in London and the southeast and parts of eastern England, but also now in some of those areas which are next to parts of the country that have already gone into Tier 4. Government ministers are getting incredibly worried about the spread in some of those areas near to London, near to the southeast of England, and they want to try and keep that spread intact and as localised as possible, given how quickly this new variant does appear to spread, does appear to be transmissible.
Absolutely. Controlling the spread is of utmost importance, as rightly pointed out by you. Ollie, earlier strains of coronavirus found it harder to infect children than adults. But there's now growing confusion over whether the new COVID strain is worse in children. What do experts have to say?
The experts are still looking at the data on that and trying to work out exactly what the situation is. What they don't want to do is jump to any conclusions. The UK does have a very large genomic surveillance capability. That's part of the reason that this new variant was spotted here in the UK earlier than perhaps in some other countries. Experts are now poring over all of the data that's coming in. They're sharing that data with international allies at the World Health Organization and elsewhere as well. And scientists are trying to work out exactly how this variant spreads and whether indeed, as you say, it is more transmissible among children than previous variants of COVID-19. And that is perhaps why in recent days government ministers and Prime Minister Boris Johnson as well have seemed reluctant to confirm that school children in England would return at the start of term, which is due after Christmas in January. It may well be that the start of term is delayed for some pupils if indeed scientists, when they continue to look at the data, do come to the conclusion that this new variant is spreading more quickly among children and school-aged children than previous variants had been. But we're not quite there yet.
Absolutely. A very crucial point made by you over there, Ollie. Now, today France is opening its borders to freight and travellers from the UK. Should this bring some respite to the hundreds of lorries queued up on the motorway? Also, how has the travel ban to and from UK affected supply chains and travel during the festive season?
It certainly should bring some respite to those hundreds of lorry drivers stuck in southern England, but it won't happen immediately. There is going to take some time to clear that backlog, not least because the arrangement that has been struck with France does mean that those freight drivers need to deliver a negative COVID-19 test before they're going to be allowed into France. So there is a huge mass testing operation being rolled out in Kent at the moment to try and get as many of those lorry drivers tested as quickly as possible so they can start making their journeys back to the European continent. Many of them, though, are going to miss Christmas with their families as a result of the delays that they've already faced. There have started to be some supply chain disruptions. The fact that the problem is now going to be eased should mean that the supply chain can begin to restore itself, but supermarkets had been warning, for example, that things like salad and lettuce and citrus fruits, the kind of things that they bring in from France and other European countries that aren't produced here in the UK, were going to be some of the things that customers would start to spot missing on their supermarket shelves. As I say, the fact that this deal has now been struck with France should mean that things can start to get back to normal, but it is going to take some time to clear that backlog, as I say, of hundreds and hundreds of lorries and their drivers who've been stuck in Kent in southern England for a couple of days now.
And last but not least, Ollie, how has the entire scenario impacted the festivities in the UK?
Well, there are restrictions now on exactly how people can celebrate Christmas, particularly in Tier 4 parts of England. The toughest restrictions mean that households are not allowed to mix at all, so families can't get together if they don't live with each other. In other tiers, the restrictions are slightly eased on that, but they are pretty strict nonetheless. There is much less household mixing going on over this Christmas period, if the rules are followed, than was going to be the case. Prime Minister Boris Johnson had wanted to be the Prime Minister who could allow some mixing at Christmas, allow some kind of normality, as he described it repeatedly in the run-up to the Christmas period. But as we headed into December and this new variant was spreading quickly, once scientists identified exactly what was going on, particularly in the southeast of England, they were very quickly advising the Prime Minister to tighten up those Christmas rules. And so this Christmas is not only going to look very different from any normal Christmas in Britain, it's going to look very different from what we were expecting only a few weeks ago.
Absolutely. It's indeed going to be a very somber Christmas. Having said that, please take care of yourself, Ollie, and thank you for bringing all those precious inputs.